Hollywood has always sold us a fantasy. Perfect smiles, heroic roles, and stars who seem larger than life. But what if some of the most celebrated legends weren't heroes at all once the cameras stopped rolling? What if behind the awards, applause, and carefully crafted images, there were egos, cruelty, betrayals, and behavior that shocked even the people closest to them? Today, we're pulling back the curtain on classic Hollywood like you've never seen it before. These weren't obscure figures hiding in the shadows. They were icons, household names, and faces that defined entire generations of film and music. Yet behind closed doors, stories surfaced that painted a very different picture from what fans were sold. Some of these accounts come from family members, others from co-stars, insiders, or long-suppressed industry rumors. And while not every claim has been proven, the patterns are impossible to ignore. Fame didn't just amplify their talent, it magnified their flaws. So if you've ever wondered what really went on in Hollywood's so-called golden age, buckle up, because once you hear what these 10 legends were accused of behind the scenes, you may never look at old movies the same way again. 1. Bing Crosby. For decades, Bing Crosby symbolized warmth and comfort. His voice filled homes during the holidays, and his movies presented him as the ultimate gentle father figure. To audiences, he felt calm, reassuring, and safe. Few entertainers were trusted more completely, but according to those closest to him, that image didn't match reality. Years after Crosby's peak fame, his eldest son, Gary, released a memoir that stunned the public. In it, Gary claimed their household was ruled by fear rather than affection. Discipline, he said, was harsh, humiliating, and sometimes physical. Even minor mistakes could trigger punishment, and if one child stepped out of line, all the siblings reportedly suffered together. Gary also alleged that household staff enforced discipline in disturbing ways, including punishments meant to terrify rather than correct. These weren't lessons, he claimed. They were warnings. The result was a home where children lived in constant anxiety, never knowing when the next consequence would arrive. The long-term impact was devastating. Several of Crosby's children reportedly struggled with depression later in life. 2 eventually lost their lives after years of emotional turmoil. While no single cause can ever be confirmed, many have questioned whether their upbringing played a role. Crosby's strained relationships extended beyond his family. Despite their cheerful on-screen chemistry, his partnership with Bob Hope was reportedly tense behind the scenes, fueled by resentment and rivalry. The contrast is chilling. A man who embodied comfort for millions may have created a deeply unsettling world at home. And if America's most soothing voice could hide something this dark, the next legend proves laughter can be just as deceptive. 2. Milton Berle. Milton Berle was once television royalty. Known as Uncle Milty, he helped define early TV comedy and brought laughter into millions of homes when television itself was still new. At his peak, he was one of the most powerful entertainers in America. Behind the scenes, his reputation was far less lovable. For years, comedians accused Berle of having an enormous ego and a habit of taking jokes that weren't his. These claims circulated quietly within comedy circles, but few challenged him publicly while his influence remained intact. Speaking out meant risking careers. That silence cracked decades later during the MTV Video Music Awards when RuPaul openly called Berle out on stage. What was meant to be playful turned instantly uncomfortable. Viewers sensed the tension, even if they didn't fully understand it. Insiders later suggested the moment reflected long-standing industry resentment. Not long after, RuPaul's relationship with MTV reportedly cooled, leaving many to wonder who truly paid the price for that confrontation. Berle's most infamous professional disaster came in 1979, when he guest-hosted Saturday Night Live. Cast and crew later claimed he ignored scripts, talked over performers, hijacked sketches, and recycled outdated routines. The episode was reportedly so chaotic that creator Lorne Michaels attempted to prevent it from ever being rerun. For someone who built his career on laughter, Berle left behind frustration, resentment, and bitterness. And if comedy could hide behavior like this, the next star proves glamour could disguise something even colder. 3. Zsa Zsa Gabor. Gabor was famous for being famous. Her beauty, wealth, and unapologetic confidence made her the embodiment of old Hollywood excess. To fans, she represented luxury without limits and charm without restraint. Behind the glamour was a far more troubling story. Those close to Gabor described her as demanding and emotionally distant, particularly toward her only child, Francesca Hilton. While Francesca appeared beside her mother early in life, their relationship reportedly deteriorated once she rejected Hollywood's obsession with appearances and fame. Things worsened after the death of Francesca's father, Conrad Hilton. Despite his immense fortune, Francesca reportedly received only a small inheritance. She spent years in a draining legal battle, trying to claim what she believed was rightfully hers, but the outcome left her financially unstable. Throughout this struggle, Gabor was accused of offering little emotional or financial support. Francesca's later years were marked by hardship, isolation, and insecurity, a stark contrast to the lavish lifestyle her mother continued to enjoy. When Francesca passed away, many questioned how someone surrounded by so much wealth and influence could allow their child to struggle so deeply. To fans, Zsa Zsa Gabor was glamorous and outspoken. To critics, her behavior reflected a pattern of emotional neglect. And if glamour masked cruelty here, the next legend shows how charm and rebellion hid even darker scandals. 4. Errol Flynn. At his peak, Errol Flynn was the definition of a silver screen heartthrob. Swashbuckling roles, effortless charm, and a reckless confidence made him irresistible to audiences. His lifestyle was so infamous that his name became shorthand for wild success. But behind the adventurous image was a trail of scandals that nearly destroyed his career and his health. In 1980, a biography by Charles Hyam reignited controversy around Flynn's life. The book made explosive claims, including allegations about his private relationships and even suggestions of dangerous political sympathies. These accusations sent shockwaves through Hollywood history, though later biographers challenged many of them, arguing that Hyam relied heavily on rumor and speculation rather than solid evidence. Still, once those stories were out, they refused to fade. What couldn't be dismissed, however, were Flynn's very real legal troubles. In the early 1940s, he found himself facing multiple highly publicized trials involving accusations that threatened to permanently end his career. Though he was acquitted, the damage was already done. Public opinion shifted, studios grew nervous, and Flynn's once carefree image took on a darker edge. As the years went on, the lifestyle that fueled his legend began to catch up with him. Heavy drinking, constant partying, and relentless pressure took a visible toll. The vibrant leading man audiences once adored slowly faded, replaced by roles that mirrored his reality, aging, troubled, and worn down. When Flynn passed away at just 50 years old, the final shock came from the medical examiner. Reports claimed his body resembled that of someone decades older, a sobering reflection of how quickly excess can consume even the brightest stars. Flynn's story is a reminder that Hollywood's most glamorous rebels often burn the fastest. And if you think scandal peaked with reckless behavior, the next legend proves that even elegance and talent couldn't keep controversy at bay. 5. Gene Kelly. To audiences, Gene Kelly was pure magic. His athletic dance style, effortless charm, and joyful performances made him one of Hollywood's most beloved figures. Watching him move across the screen, it was easy to believe he was just as kind and gentle in real life. But behind the scenes, stories surfaced that complicated that graceful image. One long-circulated rumor involved Kelly's intensity on set. According to industry stories, his perfectionism sometimes crossed into physical roughness during rehearsals. The most famous account centers on dancer Sid Charisse, who was reportedly once covered in bruises after working long hours on demanding choreography. While dance at that level is undeniably physical, the rumors fueled whispers that Kelly pushed performers far beyond their limits in pursuit of perfection. Then there's the controversy that surfaced decades later and remains hotly debated. Reports emerged claiming Kelly had secretly donated money to the Irish Republican Army during the 1970s. According to these accounts, he allegedly met with Irish Republican Army representatives during a U.S.-based fundraising effort and contributed a significant sum. Some versions of the story even quoted him as saying the money was intended for weapons, not charity. However, this is where speculation must be clearly framed. Kelly's widow, Patricia Ward Kelly, firmly denied these claims. She stated that the allegations only surfaced after his death and insisted that while Kelly was proud of his Irish heritage, he was strongly opposed to violence. She also questioned how he could have donated such a large amount of money at a time when his finances were reportedly strained. With no definitive proof, the truth remains unresolved, caught between rumor and denial. What is clear is that these stories permanently altered how some fans viewed Kelly. For a man remembered as Hollywood's embodiment of joy and elegance, even the suggestion of involvement in something so dark was jarring. And as we move forward, the next star shows how controversial beliefs, not rumors, can leave a legacy that still divides audiences to this day. 6. John Wayne. John Wayne represented American toughness. On screen, he was fearless, decisive, and principled. Off-screen, his beliefs sparked controversy that continues to shape his legacy. Early in his career, Wayne described himself as politically liberal. Over time, his views shifted dramatically, and he became an outspoken conservative. He publicly supported Barry Goldwater, aligning himself with opposition to civil rights legislation and drawing national backlash. In later interviews, Wayne made remarks widely criticized as promoting racial hierarchy. Even decades later, those statements continue resurfacing, forcing audiences to reevaluate his image. Wayne was also openly hostile toward homosexuality, condemning films he believed challenged traditional values. Yet in one of Hollywood's most striking contradictions, he maintained a close friendship with Rock Hudson, remaining loyal until Hudson's death. Today, Wayne's legacy is deeply divided. Some see him as a cultural icon. Others argue his beliefs cannot be separated from his work. Whether viewed as a product of his time or something more troubling, Wayne remains one of Hollywood's most polarizing figures. And if ideology can stain a legacy, the next star proves temperament alone can inspire fear. 7. Bette Davis. Few actresses commanded the screen quite like Bette Davis. Her intensity, piercing gaze, and fearless performances made her one of Hollywood's most respected stars. But that same fire often spilled over behind the scenes, earning her a reputation that left many collaborators genuinely intimidated. Davis was famously blunt and had little patience for anyone she felt was wasting her time. One story that circulated for years involved a dinner with director Herschel Dougherty. When he reportedly wagged his finger in her face during a disagreement, Davis allegedly erupted into a verbal tirade so explosive that half the restaurant fell silent. Moments later, she calmly returned to her meal, as if nothing had happened. Her intensity didn't stop at words. During the filming of Mr. Skeffington, Davis developed a routine of rinsing her eyes between takes to cope with harsh studio lighting. At some point, someone allegedly tampered with her eye solution, poisoning it. The incident was serious enough to involve investigators, but no one was ever charged. Director Vincent Sherman later joked darkly that if authorities had lined up the cast and crew and asked who wanted to harm Davis, half of them would have raised their hands. Stories like these fed the perception that Davis was both admired and feared. Colleagues respected her talent, but many dreaded working with her. She demanded absolute excellence and showed little sympathy for anyone who couldn't keep up. To some, Davis was simply a woman refusing to be softened in a ruthless industry. To others, her behavior crossed the line into outright cruelty. Either way, her legacy remains complicated, defined as much by her explosive temperament as by her unforgettable performances. And while Davis's clashes were loud and public, the next star's controversies were quieter, but no less damaging. 8. Mickey Rooney. For much of his career, Mickey Rooney played the lovable everyman. He was energetic, charming, and endlessly marketable, especially during Hollywood's golden age. On screen, he felt safe and familiar. Off-screen, however, Rooney built a reputation that was anything but gentle. Rooney's personal life was chaotic, even by Hollywood standards. He was married 8 times and openly admitted to countless affairs in his later autobiography. Rather than showing remorse, he often spoke about these encounters with bragging confidence, leaving many readers stunned by how casually he exposed intimate details, not just about himself, but about others as well. That lack of restraint became a recurring theme. Rooney publicly shared stories involving fellow stars without their consent, including alleged encounters that embarrassed former friends and colleagues. One of the most criticized moments came when he revealed deeply personal claims about Judy Garland, a close friend who had already endured intense public scrutiny during her life. Many felt Rooney crossed a line that could never be undone. His tell-all stories didn't stop there. Rooney even described explicit details about his marriage to Ava Gardner, shocking fans and reinforcing the idea that privacy meant very little to him. These revelations fueled the perception that Rooney valued attention more than loyalty. Later accusations only added to the controversy. In 2019, journalist Craig Bennett published claims portraying Rooney as abrasive, rude, and difficult throughout his career. One particularly troubling allegation involved a supposed relationship with a much younger Elizabeth Taylor during the filming of National Velvet. These claims were widely disputed and remain unproven, but their mere existence further darkened Rooney's legacy. In his later years, Rooney leaned into self-parody, appearing in shows like The Simpsons and poking fun at his own image. But for many, that humor couldn't erase decades of boundary-crossing behavior. And if oversharing could damage reputations, the next legend proves that behind closed doors, power and control can leave even deeper scars. 9. Joan Crawford. Few stars reinvented themselves as fiercely as Joan Crawford, rising from poverty to become one of Hollywood's most formidable leading ladies. She projected power, discipline, and control, both on screen and off. That same intensity, however, would later fuel one of the darkest reputations in classic Hollywood. Her long, simmering feud with Bette Davis exploded during the filming of Whatever Happened to Baby Jane? Reports from the set described non-stop tension, subtle sabotage, and a rivalry that bordered on obsession. When Davis earned an Oscar nomination and Crawford didn't, the bitterness reportedly deepened. In a move many saw as strategic, Crawford appeared at the ceremony as a presenter and accepted the award on behalf of Anne Bancroft, standing center stage while her rival watched from the audience. To some, it was brilliant gamesmanship. To others, pure spite. But Crawford's most lasting controversy wasn't professional, it was personal. In 1978, her adopted daughter Christina released Mommy Dearest, accusing Crawford of emotional and physical abuse, extreme control, and terrifying mood swings. The book shocked Hollywood and permanently altered Crawford's public image. Friends and other family members disputed Christina's claims, but the damage was done. For years, rumors had followed Crawford, alleged alcohol issues, obsessive cleanliness, volatile jealousy, and whispered affairs that strained marriages. Much of it remains unproven, but the stories persisted. When Crawford died, one final controversy sealed her legacy. Despite leaving behind a multi-million-dollar estate, she disinherited Christina and her brother Christopher entirely. To supporters, it reflected a broken family. To critics, it confirmed everything the memoir had claimed. Joan Crawford remains a study in contradiction, a symbol of strength whose need for control may have left deep scars, and a reminder that Hollywood power often comes at a devastating cost. 10. Charlie Chaplin. There's no denying the impact Charlie Chaplin had on cinema. He wasn't just a movie star. He reshaped storytelling itself, proving emotion and meaning could exist without dialogue. His films made audiences laugh, ache, and reflect, but behind the genius, many who worked with him described a man whose creativity often came paired with control and cruelty. Chaplin was notorious for his obsession with perfection. Scenes were repeated endlessly, sometimes dozens of times, until actors and crew were pushed to exhaustion. Those who failed to meet his expectations reportedly endured verbal blow-ups, public humiliation, or were abruptly replaced. Former collaborators later said working with Chaplin felt less like collaboration and more like navigating his volatile moods. That same imbalance followed him into his personal life. Chaplin's romantic relationships frequently raised eyebrows, even by Hollywood's permissive standards. He married several times, often to women far younger than himself. His first marriage was to a teenager, followed by another bride barely out of adolescence. Former partners later described these relationships as deeply controlling, emotionally damaging, and marked by infidelity. At 54, Chaplin married Una O'Neill, who was just 18, and the daughter of playwright Eugene O'Neill. The marriage reportedly caused a permanent rift between Una and her father. While Chaplin and Una remained together until his death, accounts from earlier marriages suggest a consistent pattern of dominance and emotional manipulation. Chaplin's life was also shadowed by scandal, paternity lawsuits, moral accusations, and intense political scrutiny that ultimately pushed him out of the United States. Some controversies were fueled by fear and paranoia, but others stemmed directly from his own actions. Today, Chaplin's films remain untouchable classics, yet his story leaves an uncomfortable question behind. How much damage is society willing to overlook in the name of genius? Hollywood thrives on illusion, perfect lighting, carefully controlled narratives, public images designed to hide inconvenient truths. These stars shaped entertainment history, but their stories remind us that talent does not equal kindness. Fame does not create character, it reveals it. So, which story shocked you the most? And do you think talent should ever excuse behavior behind the scenes? Let us know in the comments. And if you want more Hollywood stories the spotlight usually avoids, subscribe and turn on notifications.